Today we have a very special guest on the Cycle Breaker and Changemaker podcast. Our guest is Ellen Campbell. Ellen is the CEO and founder of the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness, also known as Abuse Hurts. Ellen is a childhood abuse survivor who used her recovery to create hope for others. Ellen has also held the first national conference for adult survivors of sexual abuse, and through Abuse Hurts has also begun designing programs for children. Abuse Hurts is a national charitable organization that has served Canadians since 1993. The center's mandate is to significantly reduce the incidence and impact of abuse through education and public awareness. Please listen to this episode with care and compassion, as some of the contents may be triggering for those who have endured abuse. Hello, this is your host, Renata Ortega. Welcome to today's episode of the Cycle Breaker and Changemaker podcast. This podcast is all about how to break free from negative generational cycles in order to create meaningful, lasting changes. For helpful tools and answers to your most pressing questions, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. I look forward to helping you on your cycle breaking and change-making journey. I promise you will find nothing more rewarding than this. Welcome to the Cycle Breaker and Changemaker podcast, Ellen. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the organization Abuse Hurts.
Sure, I would be happy to. I'm a survivor myself of childhood sexual abuse and really ruined my life. I ended up in a psych ward and was suicidal, as a lot of survivors are. Ended up in some very unhealthy relationships and got into my healing journey and started the agency. I actually was running the Starlight Children's Foundation at the time. And I started the agency thinking if I could just help one person because somebody helped me. And that was all I ever intended to do. Maybe I do some workshops or I never intended the agency to grow to the point now where we have so many programs and we service up to 10,000 individuals a year. We do conferences, all sorts of different things. So it was a journey. I started it 31 years ago in the basement of my house. So, as I say, it was never what I expected, but it's been the best thing for my own healing.
Wow, that's wonderful. So what was the inspiration for starting Abuse Hurts?
While I was at Starlight, I left Starlight and I bought a recovery bookstore way back when on Queen Street West, which was a real funky part of town. And it's when recovery was first coming into really Canada. And I bought the recovery bookstore and I did the first national conference for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I had over 300 people show up and I thought, wow, I thought I was the only one. And so I did 3 of those. And then I just realized that I needed to do something more apart from the bookstore that was more focused on healing and hope for victims of abuse, all kinds of abuse. So as I said, I started the agency, but never expecting it to grow. I was still running the Starlight Children's Foundation. And that's really was the inspiration, how it started. It wasn't like I had a 5-year plan or anything like that. It was strictly, what can I do to help somebody else? And my philosophy's always been, I would see a need and I would say, well, how can I help or how can we help with the agency? So for instance, we supply clothing, housewares, toiletries, small appliances, everything anyone would need to get started. Well, I realized when I started off that there was nobody else doing that. And shelters and agencies like that their hands were full just managing the clients with what they did. But
Right.
I didn't start out to do everything. It was just going to be clothing. And then it was clothing for women and children, and then clothing for men, and then dishes. And so it kind of just grew. So every one of our programs, like our makeover day, once a month, we do a makeover day with about 8 women. Someone in my church came up and gave me some makeup. And that's how it started. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll give out the makeup. And then I asked someone, could you come in and put on the makeup? And so now once a month, we have 2 hairdressers and 2 makeup artists come in. And the women get their hair and the makeup. They get lots of lovely outfits. They have a beautiful lunch. But it all just started with this one little bag of makeup. So that's really pretty well every program that we do started off that way.
That's wonderful. And I wish when I was younger and going through the abuse that I was at my young age and then into young adulthood, I wish that I had known that I could have reached out for help or that an organization like Abuse Hurts exists. It would have made all the difference in the world. So I really sympathize and empathize with wanting to help someone else. And I was wondering if you could share an experience in your life where it was a time that you broke a negative generational cycle.
My aha moment was when I was in the psych ward and I was lining up for my pills. And you're probably too young to remember a movie called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest
Oh,
with
I
Jack
know it
Nicholson.
well. I
Do
watched
you?
it. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Well,
Yeah,
do you remember when people were lining up to get their pills
I
and they were
do.
like vegetables?
Yep.
And that's how I felt. It was like a scene from that movie. And I looked and I thought, if I don't fight back, I'm going to be like one of them. I'm going to be a vegetable. And I had enough in me at that time to say I just have to fight back. So that was a decision I made that I couldn't I couldn't just stay on that victim road. I had to take the opportunities that were there for healing. So it is a choice that we have to make. But once we make that choice, then there's lots of help available now. And I think just making the decision, oh, I'm going to choose to live my life different. That in itself is very empowering.
Yes, it is. It's such a true statement. I really appreciate and value what you just said. I know for me, a really important part of moving forward and of healing has not been putting blame on the past, but choosing to live my life in spite of my past and
Uh-huh.
choosing to live a life that is fulfilled and a life that helps, where I can help others who have suffered anything similar to what I have.
Uh-huh.
So thank you for
Right.
sharing that. And
Yeah.
I know that you mentioned that you've written a book. How can our audience find your book and what is your book called?
Okay. Well, the other part of my journey is my faith journey. So I have a very strong faith. I was brought up in a Christian home, but never really had to test it myself, but grew in my faith as I got into, my healing journey and realized that really Jesus is my healer. And that's where I really got a lot of my strength from. And then I actually got ordained as a minister, oh my gosh, 10 years ago.
Wow.
And I do what's called inner healing conferences. It's called From Wounds to Worship. So they're obviously Christ centered. I did them in the women's prison for like 5 years, the men's prison, done them in a lot of churches. And and it was really putting the practical teaching that the world has around recovery. There's some really good teaching. And the church is the spiritual component. And we're really soul, body, and body, will, spirit, body, and soul. And I just put them all together and did the conferences. And I would hand out notes all the time. And finally, I thought, well, I'll just put my notes in a book. So I wrote a book called Put Your Therapist Out of Work.
Oh,
And it's not knocking therapy. I'm going to say that right away. Therapy is good. I use therapy. But therapy on its own sometimes is only dealing with the mind, and the will and the emotions. We have a spiritual side too. So they can get the book on Amazon. Put Your Therapist Out of Work. It's on Amazon. And Renata, it was really interesting for me when I ministered in the women's prison. Do you know 85% of those women were sexually abused as children?
Oh, that's so
And
sad.
in the men's prison, 95%.
Wow.
So sexual abuse of children, it's lifelong. Now,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, you're not your abuse, as you probably learned as well. It's not who you are. But until you do the healing, there's a saying, what you don't work out, you'll act out, and you'll keep repeating the patterns, which I did until I really got my healing. So I think what you're doing, I admire it because it's awareness. So much of this, Renata, is awareness
Yes.
and showing people they have a choice.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for that. Would you mind sharing with the audience how anyone that needs to can find Abuse Hurts and what type of resources? You mentioned some of the resources they can access, which is amazing. But
Uh-huh.
how can people find Abuse Hurts if they need the help, and what can they do about it?
Well, they can go online at abusehurts.ca. We're in Newmarket, but we handle all over Ontario. But if anybody is needing help, by all means, reach out. They can reach out to me. My email is Ellen, Ellen, at abusehurts.ca, or they can call us at 905-727-4357. We can connect them. People can't just call us and say, I need some help. They have to come through an agency. But if they don't have an agency, we can refer them. If it's a shelter or victim services or whatever help they're needing. And once they're registered with that agency, then they can come and we can certainly help them with a lot of wonderful items and maybe a makeover day. But they all have to be registered with an agency.
Wonderful. And how, if the general audience wants to help Abuse Hurts, is there what type of vehicles for helping? Are there donations, financial, physical? What can we do to help Abuse Hurts?
Well, certainly financial is always very much appreciated. So they can certainly go on our donate page. Also, they can donate clothing and housewares and really anything you figure someone would need to start over again. So they can make an appointment to do a drop off. We have a warehouse where we process all the drop offs. They can volunteer, specifically, especially if they're in the York Region area. We can always use volunteers for either our store or because we have a little boutique where everything is $12. It is an unbelievable find.
Wow.
If you ever come here, I promise you, you'll be back. And that 100% of those proceeds go to help the agency. So we're always looking for people to shop, but also to volunteer in the store or other areas of the agency. One thing we do, Renata, that is a little different, but I want to mention it before we end. But people don't realize that there's one or two newborn babies that are thrown in the garbage every year.
Oh,
And I won't go into the whole story, but we bury them. We've buried 13 babies. We have a beautiful funeral plot at Elgin Mill Cemetery.
wow.
And when we get the baby, we name the baby's name goes on a monument, and we have a full service. So we're just working on, I've been trying for 12 years with the government so that a woman can take a baby into a hospital anonymously. I haven't had much luck, so I'm looking at maybe going the shelter route. But that's something that um, I guess if and when I ever may need a petition, I don't know. I'll let you and your listeners know. But it's something so unnecessary, and people are very unaware of it.
I had no idea. Thank you for sharing that. It's giving me tingles,
Yeah,
shivers.
yeah.
It's really a woman should be able to anonymously handle a child if they've, could be a child that's a product of abuse, or we
Uh-huh.
never know, right?
We
And
don't.
and it's hard to imagine what must go through a person's mind having to dispose of a child. Obviously, it's
Uh-huh.
not not something that anyone would take lightly. So I'm very happy to hear that you do have a symbolic burial for those babies, and that you're petitioning or working hard to get that changed. And I'd be more than happy to try to help with that. And I'm sure the audience would too. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we part ways for today?
I just want to encourage everyone that they may be going through a difficult time. And Renata's been through it. I've been through it. I can tell you, I've seen so many people that you can come through it, that healing is possible. And I think if anything, you come out stronger. And the best thing you can do is go and help someone else. It's the best thing for your own healing. But if anybody out in the audience is needing help, by all means, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on today, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renata, for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cycle Breaker and Changemaker. I would love to hear from you and to receive your feedback. Remember, you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts in order to help me continue to help you. I am looking forward to having you join me for the next episode. Until then, please take care.